Parsons here with Boomerocity, and on this episode we got another friend coming back to visit us. Man, we've had a lot of friends come back to visit us, and it's always an honor and very flattering when people don't mind being interviewed by little old me for the second or more time. I think the record is still held by Steve Lukather of Toto. But Chris James of the Burrito Brothers is back to visit with us, and as you can tell by the background here, he's here to talk about the Burrito Brothers' brand new album, The Magic Time Machine of Love. Doesn't that sound fun? Doesn't that van look cool? I'd love to have that van. I'd drive it too. But anyway, we talk about this brand new album, which is phenomenal, and it's got a cut in there with, believe it or not, the late, great, iconic, legendary, and I do mean legendary because there's a lot of urban legend and other things around the late, great Graham Parsons, who founded the Flying Burrito Brothers, which the Burrito Brothers is obviously a direct descendant of. And that was exactly the way Graham Parsons intended his band to be, is to be ever-changing and ever-evolving. And Chris talks about that in this interview. It's our third interview with him, as I said, and it's chock full of information. We catch up on some stuff from since our last chat, including the big power outage that hit his area of Nashville and made national news. And so we talk a bit about that. Just informal stuff that people seem to love hearing, and so we just keep it into the videos. So as always, I ask that you hit like, and if you're not already a subscriber on this platform, please hit subscribe. It shouldn't cost you any money, or at least not anything additional than you're already paying to be on that platform. And it sure helps us out a lot, believe it or not. So please just take that little extra physical effort and hit subscribe and like. And also share it with your friends who you think might like this kind of interview or any of the others we've done in the past. We have a lot of fun doing it, and it's a labor of love, but we sure enjoy producing it so that you guys can enjoy it and share it with your friends. And so until next time, this is the third interview with the great Chris James, and we hope to interview him a lot more. So until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Well, hello.
Well, hello, Chris. How
Can
you
you hear
been,
me?
man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while. Good to see
Yeah,
you, Randy.
almost a couple of years.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
lose
right.
track of that stuff real easily.
I do too. In fact, when I thought it'd only been about a year, and when I started putting things together for this interview, I looked back on it. Crap, it's been almost two. So,
Just flies. It's weird. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
uh, so how's the last couple of years been treating you? How did the last album do for you guys?
It's I think a little more attention than we've gotten in the past, but we're still sort of our fate is to be slightly under the big time radar, you know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit lesser known than the hugely famous groups, but I can't complain. It's nice to be able to be making albums and working with great musicians and getting to talk with people like you and getting some attention, and we get good reviews. I like it. It's not a bad life.
Well, you're right there. You're in the Nashville area still, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, how did the power outage treat you there? Were you guys okay, or did you get hit with
Yeah,
that?
we got lucky. My wife got real concerned about it because it was so inevitable. We even got a notice from our insurance company saying super bad weather coming your way, so be careful and take these steps. And she was just sure we were going to get hit, so we went out and got a generator. And I think it's like uh, what's that called? Catch 22 or something. Since we got one, we never lost our power. But I imagine that if we didn't get one, we probably would have lost our power.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
all went
Well,
okay for us, but lots of people had problems.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
I'm hearing of people still out of power there
yes,
because
yeah,
I like I've told you before, time or two before that we talked. I I lived briefly there, about a year in Nashville when I was working for one of the companies downtown, and so I still belong to some of those community groups where you hear all the gossip and the complaints and the
Yeah.
newsy stuff and all that. I was over in the Sylvan Park area, and I'm hearing all sorts of stuff still, people still out of power. And it's like, wow, you wouldn't expect that in a city like, the greater Nashville area, but I guess it can happen anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I've got a daughter who lives here in nearby, not far away in Madison, which is
Mm-hmm.
just another, like I'm in Hendersonville. It's just all part of Greater Nashville. And
Yeah.
she went without power for a whole week.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm up here in the Smoky Mountains, and my the last time we had a really bad snow, our power went out. I live next door to my dad. He has since passed away, but the we were without power for a week, and this
Okay.
last big snow, the same snow that hit you guys, hit here, and I was snowed in for 3 days. I'd live on top of a hill, and the road. There's several of us here on this hill, and
Mm,
couldn't. I mean, the road was just a skating rink all the way down. There was just no way
wow.
to. So I prep. Luckily I prepared, and I just felt like Jack Nicholson's character on The Shining by the time the
Oh
3 days
God.
were up. Fortunately, I was all by myself, so nobody had anything to worry about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, I guess we lucked out. We got a lot of groceries just like people do. And in fact, that was funny because, when I went shopping prior to the storm coming, it was just a run on stuff. And there were all
oh
sorts of
gosh, same
empty
here.
shelves, but it didn't really affect us that bad. We kept offering to let our daughter take the generator since we weren't needing it. And she said, "Well, you may still need it." And also, it was just big enough that I'm sure I couldn't have loaded it into my car. I would have taken some kind of help that we would have had to enlist. And so she was balking at that idea too. And
Mm-hmm.
so she just went without power, although she's a manager of a couple of apartment complexes, and she was able to go to one of those and live in a vacant one for the week.
Wow,
So,
very
so that was
nice.
a lucky option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Got tired of air mattresses and sleeping bags, I'm
Yeah.
sure. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, man, this is our third time sitting down to chat, and every time we talk, there's always a new chapter with the Burrito Brothers. And
Yeah.
when you look at this moment of the band, and you've been kind of the keeper of the flame. I know you didn't know Graham personally or directly, but you've been
Right.
doing an amazing job keeping the whole legacy of the Burrito Brothers alive and kicking and relevant, and people still interested in buying your music. And so, all
Thank
that
you.
said, what when you look at this moment for the Burrito Brothers from your position, what feels most different for you in the band now compared to the last time we talked almost 2 years ago?
I would say quite a bit. I really have been feeling that it's a period of change. The previous three, maybe four albums were, uh, I wouldn't at all say they were all the same, but they were essentially the pretty much the same core group. Probably more so than any time in the long, long history of the Burritos, who've had just countless personnel changes. There's no two albums with the same personnel, but kind of felt like it was time to advance. And like we were just saying a moment ago, how strange it is that time just flies by. 2 years seemed like 2 months or something. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
realized I've actually now been in this position in this band for 17 years. And that's like, is that really true? Is that possible? And yes, it is. And so I find myself thinking that as I get turn into a much older man, that I want to keep in mind that it should go on after me. We used that wonderful quote of Graham Parsons when I first came in the band back in 2009, 2010, about how he said the idea will keep going whether I do it or anybody else. It's got to keep going. And that was wonderful. That was like justification, validation. It made us feel like, see, the guy who started the band wants it to keep going. And so that was all fine and good, except that now I'm looking at it out of a whole other window from the other side, really, where that quote ought to come out of my mouth that it needs to keep going whether I do it or anybody else does it. I don't like the idea of it ending with me.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a little tricky because every time that it got reconstituted in the past, was an offer from a record label, or in a couple cases offer from a tour, an agent for a tour. It was never the guys going, well, let's start it back up with some different guys. It was always an offer of some sort, and somebody's interested and they want there to still be a Burrito Brothers. And because the dynamic of changing personnel had long been established, it wasn't far-fetched to reconstitute it with new, so to speak, with other previously not in the band good musicians. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we've always done. But I kind of think times have changed. If I were to wrap it up and say this is the last album I'm doing, I'm finished, and just say goodbye, I rather doubt that such an offer is pending to go to some of the other guys and say, well, who's going to keep it going? So I feel as though it's up to me to try to sort of see to that. And that would be a whole new dynamic. I never looked out that window before. And
Yeah.
so I'm certain when you mention that this album is quite a bit different from the previous ones, I'm certain the next one's going to be quite a bit different because I intend to find some new blood, find some people to come on board who might, knock on wood, be the right people to carry it on when I bow out. And I kind of picture myself bowing out uh, sort of gradually. My idea for the next album is to get some people who are a lot younger than me to just guest. I think it'd be awkward to try to say, will you join the band? Especially since nowadays the band isn't a regular working band as much as a band with a record deal. That we're a recording act, and I love making these records, these
Mm-hmm.
albums, and then we work occasionally. But everybody's older, and they do a lot of other work in town, a lot of sessions. Boy, these guys do a lot of sessions, and uh, so my idea for new blood is just gradually uh, inviting some people. I've met them. I've met a lot of people playing various Graham Parsons tributes and things like that, the long players and all, and say, hey, I got a track here I'd like you to play on, and end up getting 4 or 5 names who haven't been on previous Burritos albums, and they're not necessarily listed as members, but they're on the album and they sort of enter the picture a little bit. And I hope that starting with that idea, and I picture myself maybe making at least 2, maybe 3 more albums with the group, something like that. And by that time, maybe uh, we've got enough other people into the picture. We could go from there. We'll see if it just shapes up as I hope it will. But back to this one, almost like the first step of wanting to indicate dramatic change, I got this idea to go back through the years. That's why it's called The Magic Time Machine of Love. The first working title for the concept I had was just Time Machine. And our manager in England, Bob Boiling, was mentioning that I think the Electric Light Orchestra, there's a bunch of groups that have had albums by that name. And that made me not want to call it simply Time Machine.
Yeah.
And furthermore, I thought, Time Machine is going to allude to be some sort of collection of previously released
True.
songs. And this is nothing of the sort. This is an all new album, but I've had a long career recording, and not all of it has seen the light of day. Not hardly. In fact, in the Burritos in the past 10 years, we put out a couple collections of really cool sort of leftover orphan songs that I called Sidelines 1 and Sidelines 2, and kind of went to that idea for half the album, where I loved that we had Al Perkins playing on a track. We had the guys who were in the band even before Graham Parsons. We had Ian Dunlop and John Cornell playing on a song that my brother David and I and my brother Fred all played on. And with today's technology, we're able to clean those up enough that they don't sound like some old thing slipped in. They sound just like the next song on the album. And and then the other half of the album is newly recorded stuff like we do. And this way it's sort of a journey through the whole history of the group in a new album. And
Mm-hmm.
I got a kick out of when I was trying to think of what to call it, with Time Machine being the working title, the starting point. I flashed on the Gilded Palace of Sin, the classic first Flying Burrito Brothers album, and thought, well, this kind of is sounds a little bit like that. Kind of rolls off the tongue like the Gilded
Mm-hmm.
Palace of Sin, the magic time machine of love. And I thought that's more fun. That's a cooler title for what we're chasing.
Kind of goes to the original spirit of
Yes, yeah.
all that. Well,
Which the
something
cover
that,
art alluded
yep,
to as well. Yeah.
very much so. I love the van on there, by the way. But
Thank you.
there's, I often, depending on who sends me stuff to consider delving into, depends on how I approach it. And whenever I get anything from John Lappin, it's almost always, you know, hey, he says I'm doing this one. Now I just go, sure. I don't even have to listen to it
Yeah, he's great.
because
Yeah.
I love working with him. He's a hoot to talk with, and I just really really like his way of doing things. And
I
so,
do too. Yeah.
but then I saw your name on there, and I thought, well, it's just not even. I could almost bypass John and say, hey, Chris, let's talk on this.
Yeah.
But the what and so typically what I started to say is when that happens, almost I don't get very deep into the one sheet that the publicists always put together.
Right.
Usually I go right to the music and say, all right, do I like this or not? With you or with whenever John sends me, so I just know I'm going to like it. So I cut right to the album, started listening to it, and I was like, whoa, is that Graham Parsons? I mean, if I had read the one sheet, I would have known. And it was just like, I want to keep listening to this. I want, go through each song and all that. And it's like, this when I mean this in the best possible way, not a derogatory way, but it was like weird, nice weird,
I hope
kind of a
so.
nice creepy, And I was like, I got to learn more about this, man. So tell me
Yeah.
the story about getting Graham's voice, spoken voice, into this.
Oh, well, we've done that before, but we haven't had Graham sing lead on the album before. I took most of the times I've ever taken a little soundbite of Graham Parsons, like put it in some of those long suites that we had on a couple of our albums about something
Mm-hmm.
like half a dozen years ago or so. Um, it was from an interview with Chuck Cassell that got released. It was, I think I got a copy just right here. Yeah, it's a conversation with Graham Parsons, and
Oh
it was
wow.
on Sierra Records 2002. And there's a lot of good little sound bites in there. That's where he says, the ideal keep going, whether I do it or anybody else. It's got to keep going. And uh, I liked where he said that he's loves England, that he thinks they're less jaded about things, and I definitely was of that mind. Have been pretty much our manager, who unfortunately, so sad, just passed away last summer. Bob Boiling, who, by the way, those initials I just love, BB, Bob Boiling, because we're the Burrito Brothers, and
Yep.
uh, he was an Englishman. He lived over there and got us record deals over in England, and we like to sort of aim our target audience there to a degree because of exactly what Graham said. It seems like they're less jaded and more receptive to what we do. As I alluded to a little bit earlier in this interview, I feel like we're kind of under the radar here in this country, but we're not so far under the radar that we aren't getting some recognition and some satisfaction, and our records out in the world. So it's nothing I'm going to complain about. But yeah, Graham had that little soundbite. So then, well, this pertains to England again. The Beatles, who have seemingly led the way for so much in popular music in my lifetime, for sure. Uh, they just did that another track where they isolated John Lennon's voice and played the new music to it. And I loved that idea and talked to our drummer slash engineer. We do a lot of our overdubs and everything. We usually record the main tracking of an album in a pretty regular, large, full studio, but then we do the overdubs in Peter Young's own studio there in the RCA building here on Music Row, which is a small room, couple rooms. And he's also our drummer and backup vocalist and such. Uh, I asked him just how hard he thought that might be. I said, I've got a real good idea. I've got a Graham Parsons recording of him singing Pride of Man, where he's just playing acoustic guitar. So there's not a lot to isolate his voice from. And I would love to find out if the tempo and key to what he's doing will work for us playing a backup that is inspired by the Quicksilver Messenger Service version of Pride of Man, which came out back in 1968. I always loved that. That's one of their top. That was the first Quicksilver Messenger song, essentially, because it's the first song on the side one of their first album. And it's just a killer track. And I thought, now that would be different. That might raise eyebrows. That's not your sort of country rock, that's
Mm-hmm.
more almost acid rock or something. It's rock. And we would apply our sensibilities, our signature uh, featured instrument being pedal steel gives it another flavor, and Graham singing it takes it another place. And I think it becomes a different thing for Graham Parsons. I don't think too outrageous. I think Graham was always forward looking and
Mm-hmm.
into melding. The whole Burrito Brothers, Flying Burrito Brothers in the first place were a hybrid act that was trying something altogether different. And so, it's kind of crazy to say I think he would have liked it, but I do. And and so that's where that comes from. We kind of thought, well, this beautiful high level of technology that obviously can be terribly abused nowadays, where they just
Yeah.
create fake things, um, offered us the chance to put Graham's voice on a new track. And who better to be backing Graham Parsons than the group he started all those years ago?
That's right.
And I
All right.
also sort of argue or contend that that this calling it AI, this idea of technology being all bad, that some of the so-called purists kind of say, is not really valid, because the concept of wanting to improve older, poor quality recordings with newer
Yeah.
technology is nothing new. That's been around for a long, long time. I
That's
remember in
right.
the 70s them talking about using filters and sound, Dolby or whatever, to try to improve the sound.
Yeah, remastering has been going on for
Remaster, yes.
decades. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
So it's all,
recolorization of film.
yeah, it's
So
all a case of are you doing it artistically? Are you doing the right thing, or are you doing the wrong thing? It's like uh, we didn't invent anything that wasn't there. That's absolutely a recording of Graham singing, and the rest of it is us playing. There's nothing that wasn't done by musicians performing. It's all
yeah,
very real, but able to be done with this modern technology.
I and I can edit this out if it's the wrong question to ask. But you mentioned how Graham might like it, and I've always been curious, been dying to ask you this ever since the first time we spoke. But I mean, you're there in Nashville. I know Emily Lou is there in Nashville. Emily Lou Harris. What has there been any feedback from her towards you guys about you carrying on Graham's legacy? Because I know there was
No, I
that tie
wish there
between the two.
was. I always feel like if they'd just give us a little more of a listen, they'd realize we're very respectful and we're quite good. But I think some of those people, I think we're just sort of dismissed, and I hate that. It's like uh, you ought to at least give it a listen. I do think perhaps um, how do I put this? There's no objection. If they'd have caught wind that we were just doing a real bad, that we just sucked or something, I think we would have gotten some kind of flack. And like, for instance, we've got this like not quite endorsement from Chris Hillman, where he said when we were first reconstituting the band for the Sound As Ever album back 16 years ago, um, he sort of resignedly said we contacted him because the label wanted us to put together a new Burrito Brothers and asked that we'd run by them who we'd been contacted, who we thought would be the right person to do it. So we started at the top and contacted the old guys who had been in it, like Chris Hillman and Bernie Ledden and Rick Roberts, Gene Parsons, Al Perkins. Boy, that would have been a cool band. But all, well, outside of Chris Hillman, the others said, well, yeah, I'd do it if Chris Hillman would. And Chris Hillman said, no, thanks. He said, you got to understand, in my point of view, from my perspective, the Flying Burrito Brothers have never been any kind of great gold mine. It was always a struggle and uh, kind of headaches. And I've moved on, and I'm very happy with my career as it is. And then I don't remember the exact wording, but he kind of put it that he recognizes that they're going to keep coming out with somebody doing it. And he said, so I have a request that you don't go by the Flying Burrito Brothers, just go by the Burrito Brothers. And ever since, we've honored that request. And he was filing for trademark, and we were told by the record company when we were bringing the burritos again back to life that we would need to secure the trademark rights to the name or else the deal's off. And surprisingly, none of the other guys really wanted to do that. So I raised my hand and said, oh, I'll do it. It cost something like $300 or something. And, nobody wants to spend any money.
Wow.
So that sort of instantly made me kind of the band leader, but it also wasn't in any way objected to. Nobody wanted the headaches. I can remember, especially my brother Fred, always kind of going, "You need to contact agents. You need to do that. You're the band leader." It's like it's great to be able to pass it off on somebody else. And I was always of the mind that if I was band leader, it was in a full democracy. It was like everybody agreeing to things, but
Yeah.
somebody had to do this dirty job. So I got the Burrito Brothers trademark, and Chris Hillman filed for the Flying Burrito Brothers. And the reason those don't conflict is because the trademarks are specific. His was not as a currently working, recording, existing band. It was as an archival thing. And for the trademark of a logo, which if you saw it, I don't have one right here in front of me, but you'd probably recognize it. It was on the first few albums.
Yeah.
And So he's over the years put out a couple things from the archives, and I think you can go to a website, or I know you used to be able to go to a website of his where you could buy things like T-shirts or maybe
Yeah,
even
his
bumper
merch
stickers.
page.
So
Yeah.
that's what he owned as the Flying Burrito Brothers. But his request that it was differentiated, that that was the name he owned, and the band could go by the Burrito Brothers. We've continued to honor, and now all these years later, in fact, last early about a year ago, talking with our manager Bob Boiling, I said, all these years, if Chris Hillman died or if he let that Flying Burrito Brother trademark expire, I don't think I care. I think we've been just the Burrito Brothers for so long now. I kind of like it. It's more concise. It's. I think that's why when they moved from L.A. to Nashville in the mid '80s, that their Curb record deal dropped the word "flying." Even though I never saw any evidence that anything was trademarked, they just chose to only be called the Burrito Brothers. And
Sounds less whimsical and a little
yeah,
more serious that way. I
yeah,
think.
the
Yeah.
other one sounds kind of more silly. I guess either one is a
Sounds like a
silly
circus
name.
act.
Yeah,
but to I don't know if you want to call it the defense of. I call it just more of an observation. I mean, Chris is doing this thing. He came out with his book a few years ago, and
yeah,
I mean, Bernie just come out with an album late last year, I guess it was. I interviewed him. These days are flying together. It comes
yeah.
with old age, I guess. But I know in recent months, Bernie's come out with a new album, and I hear him speaking every once in a while on Sirius XM, and different ones tied directly or indirectly to the band are kind of just doing their own thing. And at our ages, we realize there's less days ahead of us than there are behind us.
Yeah.
So everybody just kind of wants to do their own thing, make their own mark. But I would think, and we're going way off my questions list here, but I love how organic and fluid this is going. That I would think that with Americana going so strong, and I realize that's a big umbrella and
Yeah.
encompasses a lot of sounds, but then that's the burritos, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're
Um,
kind of the god,
yeah,
the
they
early
they were the bleeding
example.
edge back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they're, I would think one or two scenarios would accomplish what you're talking about or hope that would happen. And that would be either, top talent that is up and coming that maybe wouldn't be as successful on their own as they would be taking on the Burrito Brothers, or getting somebody that's maybe a bit higher above their popularity scale and within the overall Americana umbrella and use the burritos as like a super group, if you will, whose mission statement would be to carry on the spirit and sound, if you would, of Graham and all of you who were in the bands and their permutations
yeah. That'd be
after that. I
sweet.
mean, one of those would work, I would think.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't help but think that that's why I mentioned under the radar. I can't help but think they couldn't have listened because we're just too good. I hate to sound a little conceited to say that, but I know it in my heart. We're just too good for someone like that with talent to hear us and say they suck. I mean, that we don't, just not at all. It's a real good band. The musicianship
Mm-hmm.
is sky high, and all the material, the singing, everything's good. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that for some reason they just in their mind sort of did a cutoff point where, well, the burritos don't count after whenever it was in the 70s, like Hillman's line of talking tends to believe that the only real burritos are the four albums he's on, and even called the fourth one the last of the Red Hot Burritos. And uh, I always dread that he might come out real publicly saying he just thinks we're just all wrong, that we shouldn't be. But I've never seen any example of that, and
Mm-mm.
I've been in pretty good like loose on Facebook, mostly just simple exchanges, uh, contact with Rick Roberts, and he's never like made an aside or messaged me and said anything of the sort. He's also never quite said, "I listened to your album and it's fabulous, man," or anything like that. But it's just weird. We're sort of not getting accepted, and they haven't even tried. They haven't even listened. In the back of my mind, I suppose it's still possible, but time is moving so far down the road that it's a real long shot, more so than it always was. But I always wish that Keith Richard would somehow hear one of our albums and go, "Man, those guys are really good." Because I could see him thinking that.
Yeah.
And then what
Well,
an
and his
endorsement
tie to
that would
Graham, even, you know?
yeah, and what an
Yeah.
endorsement that would be.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we haven't gotten our foot in those people's doors. But we still get a lot of like the guy in Austria who's got a website and Facebook pages and stuff about all things Burrito Brothers is just thrilled with us. Just thinks it's wonderful that the group's still going, you know. And there's a lot of those people, and a lot of return. Uh, like with you, interviews and critiques, and a lot of good articles. I don't think we've ever gotten a bad review. Some of them, especially earlier on, uh, when I first got into the group, if they weren't praising enough, they kind of got under my skin. I thought, "What do you mean? We did a great job," and it's like, you got to get over that. But but
Here's what I think could be happening. I never thought of it until you and I just started talking this time around. But um I would I think that what could be coming into play again, our ages,
yes,
may
oh
have
yeah,
something to do with it. But I kind of, and this is not a fully baked idea, I'll admit to it, because it just popped
okay,
in my head hearing you talk on this. It's kind of like when people go to their first high school reunions, the 10-year reunions. There's a lot of, I'll put it, maybe insecurity.
yeah,
And there's the pulling up in the rented luxury cars, if not limos. They're puffing up their resumes,
yeah,
all that kind of, and all that is a young version of marking the territory and saying, "Hey, I'm a big boy now, or I'm a big girl now, and I'm an adult. I'm adulting. Look at me. I'm
yeah,
having fun."
yeah,
And if somebody's doing better than them, then they take that as a personal slight. It
right,
might be something like that going on today. I mean, let's face it. Like I said a minute ago, we have fewer days ahead of us than we do behind us,
yeah,
and everybody wants to be remembered. And the sad part of it was, I heard this last year, and I can't remember exactly who said it or who was credited with saying it. And I don't mean to be macabre, but eventually all graves go unvisited. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
and so maybe we should start from that point and work backwards and realize, hey, let's make the best of what we have here.
Oh,
Everybody's
that's what I
affected.
think.
You
That's
know,
what I hope
you come
kind of
across
said
that
that
way. You
before,
really
that
do.
I count my blessing. This is not a bad thing to be a part of. It's really quite nice. And for an older guy, I got in already into my 50s, and obviously after years of being in Nashville, whatever the window of opportunity to be some sort of big new star had closed. They want young people, and so to get invited to become a full-time member of the Burrito Brothers, a group I loved as far back as I can remember. I bought their first album when I was 14 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, followed them ever since, and played all those Graham tributes and everything. It's a legacy group that with a fine reputation and a great opportunity to what we've done, make real good albums and put them out there into the world. I can't knock that at all. And I also feel like it allowed me. I remember one time my dad told me, don't chase immortality. It just, you can't get it.
Yeah.
You just do be a good person and do the best you can in your life. But something akin to immortality, every artist sort of chases. I mean, the idea that I'm doing something worthwhile that's here to stay. That's why the albums are so interesting. So much my focus is because everything else is fleeting. This is the moment in time captured for posterity you can return to. And I find myself thinking, in light of some of what we've just been talking about, that this stands a real good chance of remaining something people will look at. Like my dad said, you don't get immortality. I don't know how long, 50 years from now, it'll all be forgotten. Maybe, I don't know. But I've often kind of flippantly said that I think I'll probably get more recognition after I'm dead and gone than I'm getting in my life. And I really think that's quite possible, because here I am on board on the latest entries of something people look up, uh, go to Wikipedia or their computer to look up the history of, because it's a worthwhile group, and they start with Graham Parsons usually, and there it is, and it kept going, and if people are anything like I think they are, and I know I am, if I were an outsider and I was very interested in that music, and I noticed that God, it kept going all through there. I wonder what those sound like. And you'd go look it up. And, so I sort of got in, which is something, it's not
Yeah.
nothing. Like got that little foot in the door.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, go back and you look at all sorts of artists. I mean, how old was Graham when he died? And here we are all these years later,
Yeah.
50 something years later, talking
Yeah.
about him. The
Yeah.
spirit of his work is coming out in this new album. His
Yeah.
voice is being used. That says something,
I think
and
we've been very true to a respect and an interest in Graham Parsons the whole time I've been in the group. He's a
yeah,
significant key figure in the history of the group. He should be evoked in the Burrito Brothers.
yeah, agreed. Now, somebody that you had involved, I saw a couple names come up in the one sheet. One was Jesse Colin Young, who we lost
Yeah,
last year, and
yeah,
I
just
interviewed him a few months, maybe a year before he passed, and I could tell something was up.
uh,
I didn't know what. But then also you had Timothy B. Smith
yeah.
contributed there. Tell me about both of those guys and their impact on this album.
The Jesse Colin Young song, Peace Song, is one of the ones from back a few years, like maybe even almost 20 or something like that. Uh, it was recorded with Bob Hatter, and then I got to thinking, when Jesse Colin Young died, that this recording I had that I'd never placed on any album was really quite good, and it's called the Peace Song, about how we need peace, which is always something, and it's a real kind of hippie ethic, and so I asked Tony Paoletta, our wonderful world class steel player, to add some steel to it to kind of make it more burritos, and then we brought it in and did the remaster, or whatever you want to call it, the improvement of sound quality. And I just felt like, since the guy just died, it'd be right to have our, here we got a tribute to him, in essence. So that's essentially what that was. And also, it's a tribute to our departed, deceased bandmate Bob Hatter, who was on three of our albums and then died of cancer a couple of years ago. And it's nice to find ways to still keep him in the fold, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a double tribute. The Timmy Schmidt goes hand in hand with the first song, the first and last, the bookends. The first song on the album, "A Whiter Shade of Pale," the Procol Harum classic.
mm-hmm.
I had always regarded that as quite possibly my favorite song ever. I think that's just majestic. It's a masterpiece. And I had mentioned to my wife something about when I die, I want that played at my funeral kind of thing. I love it so much. And so it occurred to me last year, why not make a stab at a recording of it if I like that song so much? And the trick there is you can't possibly top the perfection of the original Procol Harum track. And but I'm so into it that I knew that Keith Reed had written four stanzas, not just two originally. And so in our version, we use the other two verses, and they aren't any sort of Johnny Come Lately or anything like that. They're original poem that Reed, I keep wanting to say Richard, Keith Reed wrote, that Gary Brooker put to music. And there's even a few bootleg examples of maybe a couple where you can hear Procol Harum playing the song for 10 minutes or more because Gary sang all four verses. So we kept the two verse form, but it's the two alternate verses. And by having the pedal steel guitar instead of the Hammond organ featured, though there is some organ, it takes on a different quality. And we also threw in the Charles Mingus Freedom intro and outro to give it a different color. And Freedom was something that Brooker had sung prior to Procol Harum. So when I set up a session for that, I didn't want to just do one song. And I had just gotten this Timmy Schmidt album, his most recent solo album. And the song in there called Right Where We Belong just hit me so strong. I just think it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And the sentiment, I felt like you couldn't say anything better to a loved one or about your life, about your place. I like to think that's how I feel about the Burrito Brothers, essentially. We're right where we belong. Even if it's not quite as famous as I wish, somehow it's all right. And so we recorded this Tim Schmidt song. And at the time that I recorded those two songs, it seemed to me not exactly a plan for the next Burrito Brothers album. It was just me wanting to do a couple songs. But when Bob Boiling heard him, he said, those are so good. You need to build a new Burrito Brothers album around that stuff. And so we did.
I love what you did with both songs. They were phenomenal.
Thank
Very
you.
much so.
Yeah.
Before I forget, it just occurred to me, next week I'm going to be in Nashville. I'm going to go see the Sons of Cream, and John's handling them. So, you two clients of John, they ought to hit him up and say, hey, we want to meet. So
yeah, that'd be good. Who was it? I just saw sat in and sang a song with them that was on YouTube. Somebody.
Oh, who was
unexpected.
That? Gosh, it's right on. I wish I could remember, but yeah, I was. I mean, that's just. You were talking about the British thing, and then that whole thing with John handling both of you guys. I just thought, shoot, you guys ought to get together. That'd be kind of cool to see.
That would, yeah.
Because my interview with him is probably going to post. Well, it'll post next week unless I can get it done. Yeah, it will post this next week, and then I'll be there Tuesday night for the show. It's on the 17th at the at the City Winery, but they're carrying on the tradition of Cream.
Right.
Of course, Malcolm is Jack's son, and then I forget what the Baker's
son is there too, right?
Yeah. And then they have another guy, Kofi, that's tied somehow to Clapton. I think he's like Clapton's his godfather or something. I forget what the whole deal is there, but they do a good job doing the Cream catalog, and Malcolm's always great to talk to, and he did that Heavenly Cream album a couple years ago where it's kind of an acoustic treatment of the Cream songs. And
I like Cream. I definitely like
me too. Like I said, John always throws some good stuff at me, man. I don't even have to preview it, But well, what's next for you and the guys? You've got this album out. and you don't tour much, I realize that, but what are you going to be doing anything that maybe fans could come and help
I don't
support
have
and
anything
see you
right
guys
now
perform?
on I don't have anything right now on the schedule, so I better get off my butt and and chase something down. Uh, we should. My wife keeps needling me too. Says, well, "You guys got to get out and play somewhere now." And so we'll find something, and then before too long, of course, we'll start working on some new material as well, and just try to keep some sort of creative juices flowing.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be good. I mean, not full blown tours, of course, but maybe just hubbing out, doing an overnighter somewhere now and then, and
I always
yeah.
like doing that, and I'm always happy we did. We always do a good job. So I don't know. I guess I gotta not be too lazy because remember I alluded to, hey, you're the band leader. Nobody else really wants to go hunt this stuff
Well,
down.
you could probably. I mean, I know a lot of bands self book and do the handle everything soup to nuts, but if you don't want to stick your neck out on a big venue rental or anything, there's a little place here in Knoxville, or I say here, I'm an hour away from it, but there's a little place there called the Open Chord. And people come through there all the time. I mean, one of McCartney's old people, oh gosh, is it Denny Lane that's still alive? That was
No,
with.
he just oh, I bet I know who you're talking about. Either like Lawrence Juber or Steve Holly or Joe English.
Well,
No, it's Joe English. Uh, uh,
I
I
can't
saw one
remember.
of those guys'
Yeah, it was one
name
of those
recently.
guys that was with the original Wings right after Paul left the Beatles. And I mean,
Yeah,
he's played there. Jake Shimabukuro's played there. People that are just maybe looking at a drop in to fill in a day on the road, so
yeah,
they're not
yeah.
totally dormant. But I don't know how many. It's probably only 100 seats or so, but it's a great little place. And there's a Taylor guitar store in the back of it, which is nice. Got a bar and grill there too.
It'd
It's
be
right off
fun.
the interstate. Maybe you guys could
Yeah,
play there. I'd love to see you guys there. If you
yeah.
were to play.
I'd love to
But
get some playing, and I'll be looking into that. I'll get some.
okay. And there's a
Yeah,
Hard Rock up here in Pigeon Forge too. So you'd get a lot of that cross current of tourists up here. They
right.
got a full blown stage and everything, so
Yeah,
you wouldn't hurt by going there. But
yeah.
well, Chris, this is a lot of fun as
Sure
always. I
is.
love
It
the
sure is.
album. Congratulations on
Thank
it,
you.
and let's not be strangers. And if you can make that show next week, let me know, and we'll my cousin and I are going to be heading there. We'll get there midday sometime on that Tuesday, but I'm looking forward to that show. But let's definitely see if we can meet up. If not, then some
Yeah,
other time and
yeah.
meet each other in person.
I agree. I got to remember to give the plug for our website. I
Oh,
don't
go
think we
ahead,
said it at
please.
any time. Yeah, it's theburritobrothers.net.
All right.
So that's worth checking out. I always kind of aim people at the timeline. There's a couple
Mm-hmm.
pages that give an entry for each year and
Mm-hmm.
who was in the band and what album came out that
When, yep.
year, kind of thing.
It's
It's pretty
very
cool.
well done. I'm very impressed with that
Thank you.
website. It's very well
Thank
done.
you. Yeah, I like it.
So,
Yeah.
so
So the more we can get people looking at that, that's a good thing.
sounds good. I'll do what I can for you there, my friend. And if there's ever anything else you're working on, you want help getting the word out, reach out to me directly. I'm at randy@boomerocity.com, or reach out to John, and one way or another we'll get together and I'll do my part to help get the word out.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And what a pleasure talking with you. Always. Very much.
Likewise. I
Thank you.
always look forward to it. So my door is always open to you, my friend.
Well, thank
And,
you. Same
and
here.
hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yes. Yes. All
All
right.
righty. All right. Take care.
You too. All right. Goodbye.
This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quinton Hope. Quinton is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hope. And you can find out more about Quinton at quintonhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and/or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2024.